very rich again, and it's going to happen very quickly. It's time for the United States to return to the system that made us richer and more powerful than ever before. Do you know the United States in 1870 to 1913, all tariffs, and that was the richest period in the history of the United States, relatively speaking. In other words, relatively. And they set up the Great Tariff Commission of 1887, and this commission had one function: what to do with all the money that we took in. It was so enormous that they had no idea. It was a blue ribbon committee. It was set up 1887, and what to do with all of the money that we had. And again, Teddy Roosevelt was a beneficiary, because when McKinley was killed, he took over this vast sum of money, and he did all of those national parks and all of the other things. And I'm not knocking him, but he was given a vast amount of money, and that was all made through tariffs. We had no income tax. The income tax came in 1913. As I said in my speech last week, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens. Does that make sense, right?
Hello, everybody. Tonight it's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in East Tennessee. It is January 28th. So I opened up with that speech on tariffs by Trump, and conceptually, I think it's fantastic. That is correct. We used to fund our government mainly through tariffs. Okay, now what people have to understand, it's a little different today than it was then. First of all, countries had homogenized products, right? You barely had automobiles at that time. States like Ohio were oil producers. Very few people had cars. Most of the equipment that we made here domestically. We had an industrial base that made sufficient equipment for us here. And that's why we had tariffs, to protect those industries. Okay, we had a steel industry, a coal industry. We had, all your farm equipment was made here. All your tools that people use in the different trades were made here. We only imported really what we needed. Okay, so to have tariffs is a great idea, but I think it has to be done in a very intelligent way. For example, if it's a product that we don't have here that we need, well then, if you're going to tariff it, then it's just going to have a negative impact for both businesses and consumers here, because there is no option. Now, if it's something that we have the capability to produce, and we're trying to encourage companies that maybe were here, went overseas, or we've newly discovered the ability to make it here, let's say, and we want to bring a company home or even a foreign investment home, well, then maybe you have some sort of graded tariff, or you put it over time or something like that. But when it comes to things that we make a plethora of in the United States, I'm all about it, because, we have our auto industry here. We have a lot of foreign car makers here. My car was made here in Tennessee. Okay, so you have a lot of options. Okay, a lot of foreign car companies make their final product here in the United States. So that's just one example where I think it works. And what it does is, one, it encourages investment in the United States, so it'll be a flow of money. It also raises job opportunities for your citizens, okay, especially in an inflationary environment like ours right now, that will give them the capacity to have higher incomes. Because right now, you work for a corporation, basically, you're in a trade, you're in a self-business profession. You like work in retail or delivering or some sort of service industry, healthcare. Okay, there isn't that much of a manufacturing base. Where I grew up, there was none. Where I used to live in upstate New York, there used to be some manufacturing, but that dwindled out of the way. Okay, so you didn't have it. And that was the demise of the Rust Belt and parts of, like where I used to live in upstate New York. Just I-90 is just nothing but empty towns and factories, and the only jobs you had were service jobs, cops, firemen, nurses, things like that. You worked at Home Depot maybe, okay, or you were in a trade, you were a plumber or something to that effect. So it didn't have a big economic base. So I think it's a great idea. It'll help tax bases over time if you bring back these industries. And tariffs are a great way to bring them back. Okay, but I get nervous about relying completely on it because of our interconnectedness globally now. Okay, so how would it affect each industry is going to be different based upon the supply chains because parts come from here, other parts from here. Maybe we make 80% of the car here, but 20% of the parts come from, either Korea, Asia somewhere, and so forth. So I don't think tariffs, well, I'm in favor of them. They should be done intelligently based upon the industry and what are we trying to achieve with that industry? We're trying to bring back all this. But definitely things that we make as a general rule, as we make here, then yes, tariff in it. And then there's some things that are just luxurious items that we don't have. Like we can't make French wine because it wouldn't be French then. So yeah, all about tariffing French wine, French cheeses, and so forth. Maybe if it's something that you cannot get but only from France, okay, then, or a comparable amount, right? Because obviously it wouldn't be a French wine. But like if you had, a similar grape in like California or something like that. So, but conceptually, he's just conceptually trying to bring back what, I believe a lot of these changes, under Woodrow Wilson, what the United States was before, which was like a kind of true constitutional republic. Okay, right? We got 13, as he said, the income tax that changed everything. Then we got off the gold standard that took away accountability for endless money printing. Okay, which you can chart real incomes over that period. It goes down. It was particularly after we got off the gold standard. So I think these are great concepts. And you wrap that in with his foreign policy kind of Monroe Doctrine-like concept with the Panama Canal and focusing a little bit more on Latin America. It's like he's got a mindset pre-1913, pre-World War I, right? Because that's kind of where the United States really changed as a nation with the income tax, direct election of senators. Then, we had that revert back after World War I. We didn't join the League of Nations, and World War II happened, and then boom, next thing you know, Bretton Woods happens. We're now replaced the British Empire, as the one of two superpowers, the Soviets being the other, and completely changed. Then post-Cold War, going into the end of the Cold War, this increased globalization. I have no problem with trade and globalization. But I don't think you should, just for pure profit for certain individuals, ship over your industry. One, it's not good for national security. You actually could make things more expensive because you're lengthening the supply chains. So, that's more insurance for the boats, shipping costs, all the things like that. And we saw during COVID the vulnerabilities. So, I've made comments. I go to war with China. If you like your medicines and everything, all the things that are made there, okay, we would be cut off. Okay. So I do like the concept of the tariffs. I think it's a good way to go. With our spending right now, I mean, you couldn't replace the income tax, okay, especially with all the other taxes put together under that umbrella, the estate tax, the corporate taxes, and so forth. But yeah, you could bring those things. And you remember, you're trying to achieve several things. You're trying to achieve repatriation of certain factories. You're trying to tap into your own resources here in the United States, and you're trying to improve the lives of your citizens. I mean, and I think that's what it does. But you just gotta, a lot of these types of tariffs have to be very specifically targeted. And it absolutely can be used as leverage. I definitely love that idea in terms of a trade negotiations. But none of these international institutions, bilateral trade agreements. All right. So I wanted to start off with that, give some commentary on that. There's no way the income tax is going to go away. You would need a constitutional amendment. And even if you repealed it just through a legislative action, the federal government will still have the right. So what happened is if you'd replace it, it's why I didn't like the fair tax without replacing the income tax. Because what will happen is you'll end up with both. Okay? And then you'll be like Europe. You'll have a VAT as well as your income tax. So I don't think that's the way to go. So right now we still have to use the income tax. Let's bring those down, supplement it with tariffs, okay? But remember, we got to bring this deficit down with spending. So I don't, domestic spending. So there's no reason to, you can't really slash it that much right here. Okay. There are a lot of things you can do to get growth, targeted income tax cuts, and maybe change the marginal rates a little much. So, I guess that's just light years away to repeal that. And like I said, I don't want it replaced where it's not officially replaced, so you end up with the income taxes sometimes. So I just wanted to give a comment on that, my thoughts on tariffs and so forth. Here, let's pop into... Absolutely massive cleanup effort is underway in western North Carolina today. The Army Corps of Engineers are everywhere. Why didn't Joe Biden do this 4 months ago? So, now, J.D. Vance was just here yesterday in Southwest Virginia. Actually flew out of Tri-Cities Airport. Things were a mess. I heard a baby died in the cold going back a few months ago. The tents, temporary, they only got the $750. They were told that they ran out of, they ran out of time for these certain stays. It's a disaster. But yet, FEMA could pay all this money for give these illegals the CBP One app and put them in hotels and give them free health care and flood the local healthcare system, the local education system. That's why. But we don't have money for actual American citizens that once in a 500 years where a hurricane hits the Appalachian Mountains, we got nothing for them. So, if there's a will, there's a way. You can move resources around, bring in other assets. Okay. But you know what? It was political. They don't like these voters for the most part. And it's really disgusting. So it's nice to see that there is some action now coming in too with the incoming Trump administration. Now here we go. Breaking, shocking COVID revelations. Who can you trust? Professor Stephen Evans has dropped a bombshell. None of one's safety's data has been verified by its own authors. Let that sink in. None of those patients may even be real. This is just the tip of the iceberg in the growing Penngate scandal, exposing what could be the biggest COVID observational study scam to date. This is British, by the way. Here's what we know. Unverified data. Patient data allegedly skimmed from the NHS without consent was sent to a Chinese company, TPP. No accountability. That data was returned from China with no verifications of authenticity. Fraudulent studies. Multiple papers were published without a single patient being verified. Some of them potentially not even real. Manipulating public trust. These studies were weaponized to push experimental therapies and convince vulnerable populations that life-saving treatments like antibiotics didn't work. So, sounds similar to the United States, right? What did we have to have happen in the United States, okay, to get these mRNA experimental drugs to the market immediately? To avoid the 5-year rule, we had to prove that there were no effective treatments. And that's not hard. The NIH and Fauci and them go say, these can't be effective. We're going to suppress all these different types of drugs, all these types of treatments. I'll just approve that one, okay, remdesivir, okay, but we're, ivermectin, no, hydrochloroquine, no, other therapies that doctors want to use in their patients, no, even though we're at minimum anecdotal success stories all over the world. Then, but no problem, the government then coerces social media to cancel these people, right, and to censor these people, as well as, it's not hard. You got 90% of legacy media owned by 6 companies, Comcast and whatever, and you just go to their boards and say, we're pushing this message, and there you go. So the people just get fed this. Okay, I remember an NHS study coming out about when they did a slight comparison of vaccinated to unvaccinated. The headline of the story was, vaccinateds do better, but they didn't compare it to a control group. What? They did. They compared it, those people vaccinated, okay, to those people within that period. But they didn't compare it to unvaccinated people in that same period. Huh? So you got to, even their own study, because people are lazy. They don't go in and read the whole thing. I did. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Their own study is saying it's bad. And it was only months later that they stopped the mandates. And that was when, I forgot his name, but the MP who was in charge of the health minister, he was doing tour of hospitals. Makes you wonder what doctors were telling him. So, they have the same issues over there. It's amazing. From like immigration, COVID, it's the same globalist BS in the West we got going on right now that we're fighting. So I wanted to share that to you because I always keep an eye on anything that's COVID, because it is a definitely a sore spot for me. Everything I witnessed, especially when I lived in New York at the time. All right. So I always keep an eye on something jumps out at me. So here we go. Mike Pence, good old Judas Pence. Pence-led group launches ad campaign against RFK Jr. nomination, as per Newsmax. Well, as we all know, Mr. Judas Pence, okay, he was ahead of COVID. And the one cabinet person who would that fall under jurisdiction, who's clearly on the other side of Pence, that's the guy he goes after. I wonder why. Maybe am I protecting myself, my dumb decisions with Fauci and Birx? Maybe information I didn't share with the president? Maybe decisions that I made? Okay, doesn't want to be part of that. So we got to block this RFK guy. Plus, he's a corporatist Republican, right? Plus a neocon. This is the guy who actually told Tucker, okay, well, what about, he was going on how important Ukraine war is, given this, and this. And then Tucker says, well, what about crime in the streets? What about the rising food prices in Americans? And he says, well, that's not my concern. And he's shocked. He didn't win the nomination. What a pathetic little turd, okay? Glad he's doing nothing now. But now he's going to hang out with the corporate GOPers, the Koch brother type Republicans that could never put together any kind of a coalition at all. And they're just antithetical to what we're trying to accomplish in this movement. So it's good to see that he's still a jerk as he is. You'd think just for personal reasons he wouldn't try to, Trump did pick you. You're not even like honored by that. And got to serve as vice president, the highest you'll ever be. Nope, we're going to go after that guy and make his nomination picks life horrible. What a dirtbag. So, moving on. Trump put this tweet out. Wow, in Nevada, state I love it. One big in 2024. Republicans now lead Democrats in voter registration for the first time since 2007. Thank you to Chairman Michael McDonald, Governor Joe Lombardo, and the entire Nevada GOP for an outstanding and historic job. MAGA. Well, the truth of the matter is, numbers have been posted from multiple states, and since the election, Republicans are still gaining. Matter of fact, I think in Pennsylvania, we're down about 110,000 shortage under the Democrats right now. And it's like 190 officially, but if you take out inactive voters, it's really like 110,000. I mean, 10 years ago, it was over 1 million. Okay, and even Romney got within like 4 points of Pennsylvania with that kind of voter registration. So that's trending. Now, just like Trump's 56% approval rating, there's numbers in there that once the media starts going even more and more, these are people probably on the fence who voted for, Harris, but think it's going to give Trump a chance, and they'll go back to the Democrats and so forth like that, and Trump's approval will come down a little bit. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe people are liking it and it goes even higher. Who the heck knows? I'm just going based on history and what happens. You get that honeymoon period with the approval rating and things like that. So we'll see. I would like to see if these registration trends continue into the spring. That's not, hangover honeymoon period from the election. That is, we're liking what we're doing. Maybe I'm an independent. Now I'm going to be a Republican. I was a conservative Democrat. Now I'm going to be a Republican. Maybe I was a first-time voter, just registered. Now I'm going to be a Republican. That's why the Republicans have a huge opportunity based upon the demographics of this election to make this a long-lasting coalition. And maybe, just maybe, buck the historical trend of winning the midterm elections after a presidential year. And that is possible, but you got to stick to the America First agenda. All right? All right. So let's jump to the international front. You know, I was saying Austria's recently formed Van der Bellen, the left-wing president, had asked after the elections in September, where the quote-unquote far right won the election. They're forming a process of forming a government right now with the more conservative, with the traditional conservative party, we'll call it. And there were major, over the weekend, elections in the lower part of Austria. And there was about a 7% swing to the FPO. That's the People's Freedom Party. That is the quote-unquote far right of Kickel. But it's the populist center-right party. And they gained 7%. And the traditional Republicans in the area, well, traditional conservatives, that would be like a more establishment Republican Party, they had came down about 7%. So they clearly gained on their electoral success that they had on the national level back in September. And we'll see how that government, how the government forms and the policies they put in, but they're already getting their move on. Remember, in Germany, too, we have the elections in February 23rd, the AfD. I saw a poll recently. We'll call it 30-20 is the range with the CDU, CSU. That's their more conservative, it's their conservative, traditional conservative party. And then the AfD is the new right-wing populist party. But I did see one recently where it was 29-22. So that'll be only a 7-point gap. So we'll see if that trend continues. Now, there's also talk in the Bundestag of banning the AfD. More globalist left-wingers, just like here. In order to save democracy, we have to get rid of democracy because we don't like their policies. So we're going to try to vote to ban them. Unbelievable. Next. So let's just jump right into the foreign policy front. As Trump and Putin circle each other, an agenda beyond Ukraine emerges. President Trump jabs at the Russian leader with threats. Vladimir Putin responds with flattery. But there are notable signals in their jousting, including a revived discussion about nuclear arms control. So let's chat about that. Some nuclear treaties that go back a long time, I think end in a year. So, again, not a fan of international institutions, but these are bilateral treaties between us and Russia. Okay? By pulling out of the treaty in 2004 with Bush, and then I think it was 2017, the intermediate and the ABM treaty, Trump last time, advised them on that one, led to Russia developing the S-class air defense system and increasing their missile technology. That's why we got the new Oreshnik and we got the Iskander. Because they're like, what are you doing that? Okay, and with that treaty gone, it's one of the reasons why they definitely don't want Ukraine in NATO. Because what are you going to put in Ukraine closer to Moscow? That shortens that window. So I think we need to renew it. We don't need another nuclear arms race. We don't need more countries getting nuclear weapons. All right. Personally, I would like to lower it. All right. Considering how destructive they are. But this is, this whole thing has got to be. And I'm concerned that they're going to tag this on Trump because he's going to get sucked in it by some of the neocons in the White House. I'm just hoping there are enough non-neocons to say, no, let's just live in reality, get the war done, Ukraine's not in NATO, etc. Okay. But if any kind of negotiation, things like this should be wrapped in there as well. It creates our security, Europe's security, global security, period, to have these nuclear treaties done. And maybe you got to tweak them based upon technology now and the current situation in the Ukraine war with missile defense systems and everything going on like that. I don't know the exact verbiage of how these original treaties were written, but yes, they're going to have to be modified and updated when you renew them. But so moving on. What's this? What are we showing you here? So that's barbed wire. That's a Tisa River going into Romania. Now going back to like God, summer, I did a video of showing you and news reports how many Ukrainians, particularly non-ethnic Ukrainians who live in Ukraine, were just jumping over this river. They actually found dead bodies down. Well, now so many people are trying to get off at the river, they just put up barbed wire so you can't get out, trapping you. All right, this comes as they're talking about lowering the age from, they already did, to I think 25 or 24 for conscription. Right, we see the videos all the time of them just grabbing people off the streets, everything like that. And people deserting. Okay, people deserting like crazy. I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so we'll just trap you in there. So you are forced and don't have any other options. All right. Does that sound like a country that's really on the verge of victory? So that was a video of Elkaya. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce the second part of the name, okay? But that was that city in Donetsk that fell over the weekend. It fell very quickly from what I've learned since my last video. Like, they went in there. They had massive fortifications. It had like a different landscape. It was a little higher basin, so there were a lot of fortifications up there. When the Russians finally softened it enough, they kind of went in and they just took it over, and it fell in like a couple of days. Like, I saw some maps, I had it, and then like 2 days later, that was it. And that's obviously Russians putting on the flag of the tallest building in there. So that cauldron succeeded, and that was one of the cities that fell. So I had that map of it collapsing, but in since then it's officially fallen, and that's a video of them putting the it's on it. So moving on, another Ukrainian brigade is disintegrating as it deploys to Pokrovsk. So Pokrovsk, where's Pokrovsk? Pokrovsk is in southern Donetsk. It is the last city before you get to the next quote-unquote oblast, Dnipropetrovsk, okay, which I believe the Russians in some parts outside of Pokrovsk are only like 4 miles, 4 kilometers from that line, okay. They started shelling a few days ago, Pokrovsk for the first time directly, and it's a key hub that the Ukrainians used to supply through to Pokrovsk and then heading east to other parts of Donetsk. Okay, so that was the 157th Brigade the Ukraine put together. It was one of these brigades that they didn't just put together, train for 2 months ago. They actually, from what I understand, there's like 8 of them that started training in 23 and 24. Okay, and what's happened, a lot of these brigades have been destroyed. Okay, and what they've done, instead of just like replacing them, so some of the officers have some experience who left, they kind of disbanded, and now they're putting together newer brigades. You know, not good for them. And like Siersky said, talking about mobilization, being interviewed in the Kiev newspaper, it was the Post or the Independent, I'm not sure, I forgot which one, but he basically said that, you know, mobilizing 20,000 a month is not good enough to keep up. Well, that means you're losing more than 20,000 men a month. Do the math. That's 250,000 a year. I don't think that's all killed, but that's killed, can't get fought again. That number does not include, oh, God, I need some stitches. I broke an arm. I could be back in the battlefield in 6 weeks. That is, I can't fight again. I lost a leg. I'm disabled, which is, for military terms, that's, you're done. You cannot fight anymore. Those are your losses. That's why they're talking about lowering it to 25, or just did that, and talking now to lowering it to 18. And that's why they're putting barbed wire on the river. Okay? Because the numbers we're getting in the West are BS. Okay? In my other video, I did the guy from Johns Hopkins. He has it like 920,000. And it would make sense. 250 a year, 750 and change. And they lost a lot this summer. They lost an insane amount during the counteroffensive that failed in 2023. So that's what's going on with Pokrovsk. Also, Toretsk in the more eastern part of Donetsk, that's going to fall any day now as well. And Chasiv Yar to the north of that, the other big city, So these are like the last big areas in the rest of the Donetsk area to be liberated. Like I said, now they're starting to abut to other oblasts deeper to Ukraine. Then they have like Kramatorsk left and Sloviansk. That's more to the north.
За моей спиной находятся убитые солдаты ВСУ, которых Зеленский по указке Запада отправил воевать против России. Подумайте хорошо, украинцы, что вы делаете? Нас 146 миллионов. И стоит ли идти воевать против такой большой сильной страны, как Россия? Таких мест, где мы скапливаем тела военнослужащих ВСУ, очень много. Я своими глазами все это видел в течение этих нескольких дней. Трупов буквально сотни. Наши штурмовики вытаскивают их с передовой, потому что мы люди. Мы не оставляем их гнить в поле. Сегодня мобилизационный возраст в Украине будет понижен до 18 лет. И на месте этих солдат Украины окажутся ваши дети, мужья, сыновья. Подумайте, нужно ли вам это? Или стоит все-таки сдаваться в плен и не идти воевать против нас?
Now that was an interesting video that was done. That was posted on social media. But, what's the purpose of the video? In my opinion, desertions have been going up. Lots of reports of massive desertions and surrendering early. Okay. Matter of fact, even that, Ukraine will leave units when they pull out of an area. What do you think those units do? They surrender right away. So they have access to the internet. They have social media. They're trying to say, hey, stop. When you do get to the line, surrender. Okay? And your life will be spared. Okay? It's definitely a propaganda message. I can't tell if that was a stage scene or a real scene. It probably isn't. Because when you take an area, you find the dead bodies because they were running out of there, the Ukrainians. So they gather them, they put them in an empty house until they get the body bags, whatever. So it probably was real. Definitely a staged event. But he's trying to send a message. It's like, what are you guys doing? You're losing this war. You're losing your people. What are you trying to fight for at this point? Okay? Let's get this to an end. So I just thought that, I've come across certain videos like this before as well in the past.
За моей спиной находится...
So what was that video of? Those were strikes, I believe, on Sunday night that were posted all in the Kursk region. Precision strikes against key areas where the Ukrainians are holding up. So this area, as the Kursk bulge that Ukraine holds begins to shrink, these are areas that the Russians have just recently taken the last few days. Yeah, 28 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. It doesn't matter. Last few days, they took significant territory back all along the whole line as well, while hammering all inside the bulge. I've heard as many as 30,000 Ukrainians, because of this offensive, have already lost their lives in that bulge. So, and Russia was smart about it. They didn't panic. They didn't pull troops off the line anywhere else. They evacuated as much as they can, and they gathered information, surrounded them, and started doing their pinpoint strikes and accuracy. When they see, an artillery piece or a drone picks up a movement of a few vehicles or whatever, they call it in, they send the coordinates, and whatever strike system is closest will hit them, whether it's a drone, an artillery piece, or a missile strike, or an airstrike. And they'll just do that till an area is completely depleted of really any serious indefensible forces but small pockets of infantry. And that's when they'll start to move in. And they move in slowly. That's why it's taken the Kursk a long time. But when you do the casualty ratios at the end, okay, it costs Russia a lot more ammunition and resources, but they have that. And they're not emotional, and they don't put massive emotion on doing this. Because this was Russia proper, you would think that they would completely, freak out a little bit. They didn't do that. As a matter of fact, they even kept the front. Matter of fact, right around Kursk, that's when they really began to up the pressure in Donetsk, because they're like, wow, we know Ukraine just diverted all these troops, and now they have more territory to defend. They just thinned the line for us even more for us to put pressure. You know, they basically took a 750-mile front, turned it an 850-mile front. That helped Russia in the long term. It just shows you whatever advice they're getting is horrendous. But so that was it. I wanted to just give an update on what was going on in the Ukraine. Also, there was something about like some missile systems being transferred from Israel to Ukraine. And based upon the post I read, that it was done last Sunday, it was posted on 24th, so within 19th. So that was before Trump was inaugurated, but Trump's supposed to stop it. So does he even know that these 90 interceptors, Patriots, are going there? And in return, according to the post, was that Israel had sent some older equipment as well to the United States to get upgraded, to get back. So it would be interesting, but it was definitely done. The order was done before the 20th. And then another item that I saw right before I came on air, Eric Doherty posted out, but basically border crossing, since Trump's been inaugurated, is down 92%. So there's your effective thing right there. So I just want to give you an update what's going on in Ukraine, German and Austrian elections, as well as just my comment on the tariffs and a few other things that were going on that I've been following. So if you like this video, please follow, like, and share. My X is @PatriotPlanner1, and I'm on Getter @PatriotPlanner. All right, have a great day, and I'm going to be posting, following these on the battlefield over the rest of the week. Plan to do another video for week's end, and have a good night and a good rest of the week. Talk to you later.